A billionaire who rubbed shoulders with US Presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton has been accused of running a sex trafficking ring involving underage girls.
The estimated dozens of victims were as young as 14 years old.
What was referred to as a revolving door of young girls.
It's the perfect world for a billionaire getting away with what he was doing.
I was terrified and I was telling him to stop.
How could you have kept something this massive, this secret for this long?
I think everybody's stunned.
And have huge orgies there, and nobody would have any idea what was going on.
This is like one giant puzzle.
Epstein was well known and influential. Movie directors, actors, politicians, princes, and even presidents.
If I wasn't afraid to come forward sooner, then maybe he wouldn't have done it to other girls.
He was in a jail cell in Manhattan that he apparently took his own life.
This can only be the tip of the iceberg.
He was a billionaire financier, living a lavish lifestyle, who partied with powerful friends, including presidents and royalty. Yet Jeffrey Epstein died alone in a New York prison cell in suspicious circumstances as one of the world's most loathed individuals. Epstein was a pedophile who used his extreme wealth and connections to prey on young girls. But in the weeks before his death, the full extent of his depravity was revealed when US prosecutors allege he recruited a vast network of underage victims, one girl just 14 years old. Tonight, Sky News will investigate all aspects of the Epstein story. Why was he allowed to offend for so long? We'll look into his lavish lifestyle and what role those powerful friends played in his life. And experts will take us through Epstein's final moments and the litany of failures which allowed such a high-profile prisoner to die in a high-security cell. It's a private piece of paradise on the Caribbean Sea, an island replete with a mansion made of stone, a pool, tennis courts, separate maids' quarters and mini villas by the beach. This is just one luxurious piece of Jeffrey Epstein's international property portfolio.
A lot of people don't really see him. You know, he flies in his helicopter. And, you know, every once in a while we see him in the marina and stuff, but that's about it. I don't think people see him all that often. The two islands, everybody thinks he owns one, but he's got two islands out there, and I don't know, just, you know, I mean, just a guy that has whatever he wants. Two islands, as well as multi-million-dollar homes in France, Florida, New Mexico, and New York. Such is the want for a man with a near bottomless bank account. Epstein made his millions, moving and spending other people's riches. The boss of Bear Stearns gave the then school teacher an entry-level gig at the Wall Street giant in 1976. 4 years later, he was a partner. He went on to create his own consulting and then financial firms.
However, he kept all of his clients a secret, so we don't even know whose money he was managing. According to the Washington Post, there was a few wealthy clients that said that Epstein told them he could move their assets overseas so that they can be sheltered from U.S. taxes.
The king of lingerie took Epstein to another level. Victoria's Secret CEO Leslie Wexner made Epstein his right-hand man, granted him power of attorney, entrusting Epstein with his $6 billion fortune. Jeffrey Epstein rose from a maths teacher to a massive player in the Big Apple.
There's so much secrecy around Epstein that we don't really know how much money he made at his peak, but according to court filings from July 2019, he made over $500 million, but most of his assets were tied to hedge funds, stocks, as well as properties around the globe. There are a lot of theories about how Epstein made his money, but over the coming months, investigators will be parsing through his financial statements, and hopefully we'll have some more answers.
By the early 90s, Jeffrey Epstein was a well-known New York nightlife figure, attending fashion shows and the most popular parties, hosting models at his Manhattan home. Epstein once described himself as a collector of famous friends.
Jeffrey Epstein was well known and influential. He used to throw these dinner parties in Upper East Side, New York, where a lot of influential people would attend, from movie directors, actors, politicians, princes, and even presidents.
Donald Trump reportedly attended several of those parties. This video shows them together at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in 1992. Trump told a New York Magazine journalist Epstein was a terrific guy, that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. But he gave a less glowing appraisal just last month.
I was not a fan of Jeffrey Epstein, and you watched people yesterday saying that I threw him out of a club. I didn't want anything to do with him. That was many, many years ago. It shows you one thing, that I have good taste, okay? Now, other people, they went all over with him. They went to his island. They went all over the place. He was very well known in Palm Beach. His island, whatever his island was, wherever it is, I was never there. Find out the people that went to the island.
A previous US president appears to have had a closer connection. Epstein attended several fundraising dinners for Bill Clinton, twice donated to his 1992 presidential campaign, and gave $25,000 to the Clinton Foundation in 2006. A Washington Post examination of flight logs revealed Bill Clinton took 27 flights on Epstein's private plane, including trips to Asia and a flight to Africa with actor Kevin Spacey. A statement from the Clintons' press secretary claims the former president only had 4 journeys on Epstein's plane, a number bundling up all individual flights, saying President Clinton knows nothing about the terrible crimes Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to.
I have no idea. I know he was on his plane 27 times, and he said he was on the plane 4 times. But when they checked the plane log, Bill Clinton, who was a very good friend of Epstein, he was on the plane about 27 or 28 times. So why did he say 4 times?
Prince Andrew, the Queen's second son, had known Epstein since the 90s. The pair have been seen strolling together through New York Central Park. Prince Andrew reportedly attended several Epstein events, including on his personal island. The royal was accused of inappropriately touching a woman in 2001 at Epstein's New York home, an accusation he strongly denies. And years ago, Epstein paid the Duke of York's former wife, Sarah Ferguson, £15,000 to help her pay off debts. Ms. Ferguson later said of the matter, "I personally, on behalf of myself, deeply regret that Jeffrey Epstein became involved in any way with me." In 2015, news and gossip website Gawker published what it claimed was Jeffrey Epstein's Little Black Book. It contained more than 1,000 names and numbers, including actors Ray Fiennes and Alec Baldwin, media identities Charlie Rose and Barbara Walters, Prime Minister Ehud Barak, and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Sky News does not suggest wrongdoing by those connected or reported to be connected to Jeffrey Epstein, or that they were previously aware of his crimes. While making millions and mingling with the powerful, Jeffrey Epstein was also preying on the vulnerable. His depraved activities, confirmed and alleged, first came to light in 2008 in Florida.
He apparently had sometimes prostitutes and friends who were adult women procure these young girls to come into his home, and some have said that that was up to several girls per day that were then coming in under the guise of giving him a massage for money, which he was offering to pay them several $100s for, and then once they were there, or once he lured them inside, then led into much worse and ultimately in sexual abuse.
Investigators identified at least 40 alleged victims. One was just 14 years old. A detective on the case described Epstein's abuse as like a sexual pyramid scheme. It was alleged girls would be offered $200 to $1,000 for a massage at his Florida home, which would often lead to sex. They'd be offered more cash to bring him new girls. But despite the corroborated claims and a bevy of witnesses, prosecutors scrapped several serious charges and agreed to a deal with Epstein's legal team for what was widely viewed as a stunningly lenient sentence.
He, back in 2008, pleaded guilty under what was known as a secret bargain deal to sexually abusing a young girl, an underage girl, and instead of being convicted and going to jail for what could have been the rest of his life, he ultimately got off on a 13-month sentence, and during that time was in a pretty luxe prison cell where he had television, was allowed out for up to 12 hours a day to go to work, and what was also referred to as basically the deal of the century for him. It was a big win for Epstein.
The non-prosecution agreement also granted immunity to any potential co-conspirators and prevented victims from challenging it in court.
The fact that a wealthy and powerful person is given a non-prosecution agreement is not particularly unusual. It happens all the time. The federal government, with all of its resources, our federal government, likes to pick on people that can't really fight back. I think what is unusual about the non-prosecution agreement is that it granted immunity to all potential co-conspirators. That is something I have certainly never seen. I don't know any lawyer that has ever seen a prosecution agreement that granted immunity to potential co-conspirators, basically shutting down the entire investigation against Epstein.
Miami's then U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta later said he didn't go hard on Epstein because he believed he belonged to intelligence and Epstein was, quote, above his pay grade.
That suggests that he had some very powerful friends, possibly people in intelligence services, either the United States or other countries working with the United States, which, if true, is certainly a massive scandal. If he was exploiting children to gain dirt on prominent people, whether they be in this country or other countries, and working with U.S. intelligence, that would be a major scandal. To my knowledge, no one has wanted to touch that possibility or to look into it. Certainly, I don't know of anyone that has asked Acosta, who is it that told him to back off of Epstein? Who told him that he was with intelligence? Who are the intelligence agencies that he was working with?
After a little over a year, the convicted sexual offender was a free man. But Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter Julie K. Brown has doggedly pursued the Epstein case and the victims' push for justice for years. She identified 80 alleged Epstein victims, as well as a woman who claims she recruited at least 70 girls.
There's other cases involving Mr. Epstein that have been sealed. That was another one of the ways that he manipulated the justice system. His lawyers were able to seal a lot of the information, and that's why the Miami Herald went after this particular case as a way to try to start unsealing some of the things that have been secret in all these years.
On July 6 this year, more of Epstein's dark secrets were brought to light.
A billionaire who rubbed shoulders with U.S. Presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton has been accused of running a sex trafficking ring involving underage girls.
Federal officials alleging multi-millionaire Jeffrey Epstein abused dozens of underage girls. The 66-year-old hedge fund manager was arrested Saturday upon arrival in the U.S. from Paris.
He was charged with 1 count of sex trafficking of minors and 1 count of conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking of minors. The charges relate to incidents in New York between 2002 and 2005. More were expected to be added after authorities raided his multi-million-dollar Manhattan home.
And found what they described as a trove of lewd photographs of underage girls who were naked, some also of age, thousands of dollars in cash, and also an expired passport from the 1980s, an Austrian passport, which had Epstein's photo but a different name. His lawyers argued that it was just for his own protection at a time of terrorist attacks, but it really didn't get to the stage where we got to find out if he had personally used that. There were stamps in the passport that showed that it had been used in Saudi Arabia and several other countries, but we never really got to whether or not it was Epstein who had used it or somebody else, or if it was completely bogus.
While more women came forward with harrowing tales.
And he, you know, very forcefully kind of brought me to the table, and I just did what he told me to do. I was really scared, but I was terrified, and I was telling him to stop. Please stop, you know.
And did he?
No, he did not stop. He had no intention of stopping, and that's what he wanted, that's what he got.
Virginia Jeffrey, now a mother of 3 living in North Queensland, was just 16 when he was introduced to Epstein.
The training started immediately. I mean, it was everything down to how to be quiet, be subservient, give Jeffrey what he wants. You're screaming on the inside and you don't know how to let it come out. And you just become this numb figure who refuses to feel and refuses to speak and refuses. All you do is obey. That's it.
She told the Miami Herald she was taken to one of Epstein's islands to have sex with his friends.
It's the perfect world for a billionaire getting away with what he was doing. He could hold big parties there and have huge orgies there, and nobody would have any idea what was going on.
In a 2015 defamation case, Mrs. Jeffrey claims she was lent out to prominent figures, including Prince Andrew, who she claims had sex with her 3 times. Buckingham Palace says any allegations of such inappropriate behaviour against the Duke of York are categorically untrue, and the judge hearing the case has struck the allegations from the court record. Jeffrey also detailed what went on in Epstein's notorious private jet.
It's called Lolita Express for a reason. That was a vessel for him to be able to abuse girls and get away with it without anybody being alarmed or any alarm bells going off.
She broke free from Epstein's circle when she was 19. She fled to Australia. Virginia and so many others finally thought they would have a chance to face their accuser in court. The billionaire deviant would face justice. Epstein was denied bail and sent to one of the most secure centres in the state to await the trial so many had waited so long for.
Only by taking away the freedom of Jeffrey Epstein can we restore the freedom of these victims. They have been living in fear and intimidation since the day they were abused by him, and now he is in jail. We thank everyone for their efforts in helping us get to this day. Thank you very much.
This is Weekend Edition.
But there'd be no trial.
A billionaire financier in the United States who is facing trial on sex trafficking charges in a case that threatened to implicate presidents, celebrities and even royalty has died in prison.
It was in a jail cell in Manhattan that he apparently took his own life.
That at a facility the Justice Department once considered to be one of the best run in the Bureau of Prison system.
This should have been a safe place to keep one of America's highest profile prisoners. The Manhattan Correctional Center has housed some of the most dangerous criminals ever detained in the US, including Al-Qaeda operatives and drug lords. But a litany of failures there led to Jeffrey Epstein's death.
I think everybody's stunned. He's probably, his case right now was the #1 case. In fact, when they announced his indictment last month, Jeffrey Berman, the U.S. attorney here in New York, said this was their #1 case that they were working on. So it's pretty stunning that he would be able to commit suicide, considering what a priority this case has been here with the Justice Department.
Epstein was a known suicide risk. He was earlier found with apparent self-inflicted injuries. Yet he was taken off suicide watch, and a day before his death, prison operators removed his cellmate. Jeffrey Epstein was suicidal, alone, and unsupervised.
The federal investigation so far has shown that the guards who were supposed to be guarding Jeffrey Epstein the night that he apparently killed himself falsified logs to make it appear that they had checked on him when in fact they had not. It's not clear yet exactly how much time he had, but certainly if the 30-minute checks that were regularly intended were not made, he would have had some window to harm himself.
One guard in Epstein's unit was working a 5th straight day of overtime when Epstein took his own life, while a second was working mandatory overtime. A union boss told the Washington Post one of those assigned to Epstein's unit was not a corrections officer, but a fill-in from another department.
I do not understand how anyone can explain not having him under 24-hour surveillance. He got 3 strong reasons why this man may be done in. He might commit suicide, he apparently attempted it, or he was attacked. That threat still remained even after a week. And the third one is maybe a prisoner on his own is just going to take him out.
The Manhattan Corrections Center warden has been temporarily reassigned pending an investigation. 2 guards have been placed on administrative leave. Both the FBI and the Justice Department are looking into Epstein's death. Despite the autopsy results, there remains speculation this wasn't a suicide. But Epstein, a man potentially with so many secrets about powerful figures, was silenced.
He kept a lot of very powerful people very close, and it's for that reason that a lot of conspiracy theories have really been sparked since his death, because there was a lot of discussion about whether or not, and not necessarily anybody that I've just named, but whether or not any of these close and powerful friends of his were concerned that their names were going to come out in his impending trial.
Epstein's last act denied his victims the chance to face him in court, but their search for justice did not die with him.
How many important people have to be caught up in this? How many people know about this? Because when you know about something and you participate in it, in most cases under American law, you have criminal liability for that. So this can only be the tip of the iceberg.
Although they lost Jeffrey Epstein, the biggest part of the case, the threads of this sex trafficking case are far wider than Epstein. He had a lot of help doing this. He did not do this himself. A lot of people made money off of this operation, and I'm sure a lot of the work that they've already pieced together is still going to go forward because of all the other people involved that they probably were looking at. So there'll be other charges, I'm sure. There'll be other indictments.
US politicians are calling for the Justice Department to rip up the non-prosecution agreement made with Epstein a decade ago so no one connected to the case can escape punishment, while several civil suits for damages against the Epstein estate are likely to be filed in the coming weeks and months. Epstein's former associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, is being sued by one of his alleged victims. It's claimed Ms. Maxwell recruited young girls for Epstein's sexual pleasure.
What hurts even more so is that if I wasn't afraid to come forward sooner, then maybe he wouldn't have done it to other girls. I feel really guilty. To this day, I feel really guilty.
Authorities are picking through Epstein's formerly private paradise, part of what's expected to be a wide-reaching probe.
They would be talking to the people that ran his ranch, all of the employees at his islands in the Caribbean, the ranch in New Mexico, the place in New York, his place in Florida. All of these places just to operate and to run are very labor intensive. So you'd start with employees and see who saw what, who came and went, and what happened, and then you kind of work your way up the food chain from there.
The US Attorney General has promised the Justice Department will hunt down those involved in his sordid network.
We will get to the bottom of what happened, and there will be accountability. But let me assure you that this case will continue on against anyone who was complicit with Epstein. Any co-conspirators should not rest easy. The victims deserve justice, and they will get it.
Justice. What is justice for those who suffered within such a horrid network of abuse? How do those who were too young and overwhelmed then supposed to get justice now. The orchestrator of their abuse is dead. The justice of a lengthy prison sentence isn't possible, while a payout from Epstein's vast estate is. Justice for some of Epstein's victims is simply an acknowledgement they were wronged, not just by a wealthy, conniving financier, but by those who should have delivered justice in 2008 and those who facilitated Epstein's lewd lifestyle for so many years. Justice would also be using the Epstein saga to encourage victims of abuse to speak up and others to speak out against those who prey on the vulnerable.
You know, if we can make that point across, that doesn't matter how rich you are, it doesn't matter how powerful you are, there are girls out there that will speak up, and I don't care if it's 10 years later or 15 years later, whenever you're ready to do it, you do it, you know, and you protect the ones that are younger than us.